Dear ladies and gentlemen, here in audience and online, it's my pleasure today to play a role of journalist. I'm not, but I'm very curious. Curiosity, I think that's a good start for the subject where we think that we mainly know everything, that defense cooperation is going on quite smoothly and pragmatically, but I have prepared already a lot of questions, but what I have heard from the organizers that there are many more questions coming both from online, and I hope that there will be also some encouraging questions in audience. So I'm Elina Egle, I'm chairperson of the Federation of Security and Defense Industries of Latvia. So I'm also one of those people who have just recently crossed the ocean because we have just having people both from our US embassy here in Riga and from Latvian embassy in Washington, D.C. And of course, our well-known diplomat and also politician, Imants Lieģis. So for those who haven't probably been reading the introductions about our speakers, I would like just to remind you that basically Julia Jacobi, she's here in Latvia just very recently, and she managed to learn something in Latvian already, so that's really impressive. So I'm just reading the history of 20 years of working for Foreign Affairs Office, being a diplomat in Madagascar, in Vienna, in all those, in Greece, working on the defense cooperation. I think we will get probably some new impressions about what's going on here in Baltics and in Latvia and defense cooperation from you. And as I mentioned before, Imants Lieģis, he has been, I would say, our heritage of diplomacy in Latvia, because he moved to Latvia in 1992 and started his diplomatic career. He also was the Minister of Defense. We have had an opportunity to work together in quite tough times during the financial crisis. And there are many posts of ambassador in countries like Spain, Hungary, France. And we have done quite many good things together. And I would especially mention the post of ambassador to the NATO. And Iris, I would think his experience is also very remarkable because working in a Ministry of Defense in various positions already for 22 years, that's a dedication, I would say. And he has been good supporter of the Ministry of Defense, working not only in a NATO office, but also working in Secretariat General for European Commission. And right now he's our counselor in Latvian embassy in US. So with this, I would probably say that my plan was to look a little bit back, concentrate probably on a current state of affairs, and to have a little bit foresight, where do we go with our defense cooperation. And for those who haven't been probably reading the brief of Iris about defense cooperation of Latvia and US, I would really encourage to read it, because it's really very good how to say, analysis of the defense cooperation what we have had before. But thinking about this previous aspect, I would probably go with my first question to Julia. And thinking about defense cooperation, I have been reminded yesterday that US was the first country who was brave enough among those ones who said that there is not only right of Latvians, Lithuanians and Estonians to be free, but they have also right to have their own weapons. And this has been in the very beginning of our independence. So is it about sovereignty, solidarity, or there is something else in defense cooperation of United States. What's in DNA? Why you were so supportive for Baltic countries in a very, very beginning? So could you respond on that?
Thank you very much, Alina, and thank you to the Riga conference organizers for inviting us. It is really a pleasure to be here today, and the U.S. Embassy is very proud to co-sponsor the event. Last year, we celebrated 100 years of diplomatic relations, and now we are looking forward to the next 100 years. And a big part of that is, of course, the bilateral security and defense relationship between the United States and Latvia. The US and Latvia are strategic friends, partners, and allies, and our security and defense relationship is very deep. And there are three things that I'd like to focus on today, if I may, in response to your question. One is our cooperation on a bilateral level. The second is our cooperation in NATO. And third is how we work together on Ukraine. So on bilateral cooperation, a cornerstone of that cooperation between the US and Latvia has been the Michigan National Guard, which has been a key part of building up Latvian security from the ground up. And I want to emphasize here that the US commitment to Latvia's security is one of both blood and treasure. There's been a persistent US military presence here, and that presence remains. The US and Latvia have deployed together, and we have died together. And this commitment is there because, as you mentioned in your question, going back to the very beginning, we know that you can't surge trust. We have to build that trust step by step and maintain it, and it is so very precious. So the US has been a long-time investor in Latvia's security. We continue to be. Since 2022, we have invested over $300 million in training and equipment to help improve Latvia's coastal defense, air defense, and maritime domain awareness. And I also want to mention here border security, which is another area where the U.S. has invested a lot. There's been about $17 million of investment in training and equipment to strengthen Latvia's borders, with all-terrain vehicles, night vision goggles, and unmanned aircraft systems, just a few examples. But really, we can't put a number on our alliance. Latvia is an invaluable ally, and these security assistance programs strengthen Latvia's ability to defend every square inch of its land, sea, and air. We can talk a little bit more about how we work together in NATO and on Ukraine, but I think for now I'll just leave it there on the bilateral side. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Imants, looking back, a little bit more back, I think that one of our priorities has been during those turbulent times to have American soldiers on our soil. And also we see that there has been remarkable investment, not only in equipment, what was mentioned by Julia, but also in an area of critical infrastructure. And if we are looking back, have we made the right priorities? Could there be something more, having this understanding of today? Have we set the right priorities?
Yes, well, thanks for the question, Aline, and thanks to the organisers for inviting me to join this panel today. It's a great pleasure to participate, and I think it's quite clear that we've made the right priorities. But I think, as Julia mentioned, last year we marked the 100th anniversary of bilateral relations between the United States of America and Latvia. And so I just want to sort of sketch out a couple of important moments during the last century, which have been important, and I think we need to start off with the Woodrow Wilson 14-point plan of 1918, because that points out really the sort of the values element of the United States and how this plan really helped with the recognition of our country originally back in 1922, which was a little bit later than our own Declaration of Independence was in 1918. And so that, of course, was based on the rule-based order for free nations, and that still has very important resonances today when we look at the global situation. And so Latvia was one of the several countries that emerged from the wreckage of the Russian Empire at that time. And it's right that if we look back historically, we can see that there was a little bit of wavering by our American allies to be engaged in Europe in the lead up to the Second World War. But to my mind, this was really compensated by the very important, the crucial declaration of Sumner Wells in 1940 concerning the non-recognition of Latvia being incorporated into the Soviet Union illegally. And again, we see important parallels today, because Ukraine, parts of Ukraine, Crimea, parts of the east of the country are illegally occupied. So we see that this policy of non-recognition is still very pertinent, a very pertinent policy by the United States and other Western democracies as we sit here. And this policy of non-recognition, as we saw, stood the test of time because it lasted for about 50 years until Latvia regained its freedom and independence in 1991. So I think, just very briefly, since we regained independence, the support of the United States has been crucial to Latvia and to our neighbours. We had, first of all, the recognition and re-establishment of diplomatic relations. We had the engagement of the United States in the process of the removal of Soviet troops and infrastructure from Latvia between 1991 and the troops left in 1994, but the last infrastructure was blown up in 1995 at Skrunda, the radar base, where, again, that was with important US engagement. And then, of course, we had something that was essential to Latvia's security today, and that is United States lead in the enlargement of NATO, where without that, of course, we would not be sitting here today as a member of the world's most important military alliance. So that's a little sketch of the past. I just want to sketch in a few points about future cooperation, which I think should be noted. And I think Julia already mentioned one, and that is the importance of giving maximum support to Ukraine. And we see that America's role is the most important globally. You know, they're the ones that are giving the most military support at this point in time, with Germany in second place, and you know, Europe's engagement also being very important. So this, of course, is going to be very crucial, especially during the next year, when we have the issue of ensuring that there is bilateral support really cemented into the next administration from the United States. And that's an issue that's obviously going to be on the agenda and something that everybody in Europe will be looking at quite closely, because the challenge that we face is that Europe, and this has been acknowledged also by the head of the Commission's foreign relation policy, Borrell, is that Europe is not able to replace the United States in support to Ukraine. So that's why it's so crucial that America hangs on in there, as it were, to ensure that Ukraine defeats Russia's forces as effectively and quickly as possible. So,
I hope
yes.
we will come back to this
Okay.
next year. We will come back to this next year, but going to this recognition question and going to this really, I would say, impressive support for the Baltic countries joining the NATO, I would probably still would like to also encourage Iris to comment some of his ideas in his brief regarding this necessity to probably have more interoperability approach for defense cooperation in the Baltic countries, and how you would probably comment this necessity.
Thanks, Alina, and thanks, Julia and Iman. It's great to be amongst you. But let me start saying thanks particularly to Janet Ozolin, because you see, so many good things happen if you talk to Janet Ozolin, so do everyone, because we not only celebrate last year 100 years of diplomatic relations, we celebrate this year this remarkable 30 years of starting state partnership program between Latvia and Michigan in particular, but also the state partnership program. It all started 30 years ago with Latvia being the first one officially signing this agreement with Michigan, and then Lithuania and Estonia immediately following. Before I precisely answer your question, I just want to say a couple of sentences of why this brief. Well, first of all, that was indeed that came out of conversation with Janeta. But the point is that 11 years ago, I wrote a similar one that you can still read it's freely available in internet. That was the Eastern European Policy Center, Andris Kudors and Ivars Indans edited the edition on a U.S.-Latvian relationship. Then it was called 20 years of U.S.-Latvian defense cooperation. But I realized that over these last 10 years, rarely somebody actually wrote something about this. So Toms Rostoks wrote the piece last year. Ministry of Defense, together with Michigan National Guard, wrote kind of institutional memory piece. But seeing so many enthusiasts of political science and international relations, I would kind of assume that there will be now streaming writing about U.S.-Latvian relations, because believe it or not, well, for the expert of my kind of knowledge, I could couldn't find a lot of reference where we are currently with these relations, let's say 10 years after that piece I wrote. So I decided that probably it's too boring for people, because exactly of that smoothness of those relations on the surface. But believe you me, this is still very interesting, albeit I must attest that this is a smooth relation and non-issue relation, so to say. But nevertheless, the novelties that I tried to describe in a policy brief exist, and specifically on a streamlining of U.S. security assistance to Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, and in particular from kind of scattered individual bilateral approach towards this more regional approach. You see, it makes a lot of sense, not only for U.S. Congress to scrutinize security assistance, because that's at the end of the day, it's millions and millions of U.S. taxpayers' dollars, but also from this perspective of interoperability and kind of more regional perspective. We are three sovereignties in this region, right? Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia are similar as we are not the same, and sovereignty matters. For defense planners, that is one of the very important things. How you ensure in alliance context that you can actually operate in this region as seamlessly as that will be possible. So one of the first things that you ensure, notwithstanding the administrative issues that you need to kind of tackle, is of course the interoperability of capabilities. And that is what U.S. Congress, by starting Baltic Security Initiative, that the absolute novelty of this last 5-7 years, has streamlined the security assistance into unified effort for all 3 Baltic states. This now is being discussed in the capitals together with offices of defense cooperation. Then it's discussed with EUCOM as a US European command, and then Pentagon and State Department, and then in Congress. So now it is ensured that these capabilities set out in capability development areas set out in Baltic Security Initiative will be developed as coherent as possible, together with US allies, together with our Polish allies and other European allies here in the theater. So all in all, the interoperability is a very popular word, obviously, over the last 70 years at NATO, but it materializes very much in cooperation and the security assistance that the US is providing, and we see that from the common purchases of, or parallel purchases of long-range artillery, coastal missile systems, and air defense that we do in different time variations, but with the same security assistance funding. So, yes, indeed, to sum up this brief overview, interoperability is indeed the word of the day, and the more interoperable we'll be amongst ourselves here in the region with our US allies and our other allies in NATO, the more success we'll have on the operational field.
Thank you, Iris. Would you have something to elaborate on this pan-Baltic approach? Not yet, yeah?
Oh, sure. No, absolutely. Iris made a very good point about the Baltic Security Initiative and the goal being to achieve interoperability. Of course, that's our goal with assistance to all NATO allies, that we can function as the most powerful alliance, military alliance in the world's history by being truly interoperable with each other. So, and really, Latvia's membership in NATO has tremendously strengthened the alliance, starting from when it joined in 2004 and looking to the present, where Latvia hosts the multinational North Division here, enabling the Supreme Allied Commander of Europe to be able to move forces here and react swiftly in a time of crisis. So, really tremendous contribution to the security and stability of NATO's eastern flank. And we will, the United States, and will continue to look at how we best work together in terms of our military cooperation, in terms of specific systems, to continue to strengthen NATO's eastern flank.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's right that the support that we've received jointly from the United States, all 3 Baltic states, is a force multiplier in many ways, and it helps to give visibility to our contribution towards the alliance. But let's not forget, let's put this slightly into perspective, and I'll be slightly controversial here. Unfortunately, Washington doesn't wake up in the morning thinking about our security every day. I would like that to be the case. We've seen, if we look at what's happening at the moment, that Ukraine is probably 3rd on the agenda in Washington. Second on the agenda is, and we must respect, President Biden for visiting Israel these days. He's visiting a war zone, and it's quite right that America should be engaged in the Middle East. But the main priority in Washington, my understanding is China, from a global perspective. So we have to therefore solidify the cooperation amongst the Baltics within NATO to make sure that really our most important strategic ally, the United States, is able to continue to support and be engaged in Europe in the years ahead, given the challenges that the United States faces as one of the most important global powers, and a rising China, which is like really challenging this whole global structure at the moment.
Yeah, but yeah.
One point, though, not contradicting what Iman said on his global outlook, but you see, when you read this document called National Defense Authorization Act, the current draft, that is still, we're impatiently waiting that Congress and Senate can move forward on that. But you see, the interesting thing is that there are very rarely nations mentioned in this document, right? What nations are mentioned in the document? That is Israel, Ukraine, for obvious reasons, Russia and China, for obvious reasons, and there is Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. So there are no other countries in this document mentioned. So I would say, yes, you are absolutely right to say that Washington does not kind of wake up with the Baltics in mind, but they are talking about Baltics almost every day, and I think that we need to pretty much value this approach that we have such a support currently in Congress and Senate. This has always been the case, but particularly today, that we are able to be kind of mentioned in this very important document that mentions thousands and thousands of different priorities. Obviously, that is very, very encouraging for where the U.S. policy towards the Baltics stay.
Yes, and here we are coming back basically to what Iman's also said in the beginning, that we have these doubts about the next year presidential elections, and there was also, I would say, a statement also from Iris that during the Republican administrations and Democratic administrations, and due to different events, what has been happened globally, there has been support for the Baltic countries. So can we rely on that? How do you see, with your political experience, and probably then from your experience as a diplomat? Yeah.
Well, I think that we can be really grateful to our US partners that there has been consistency, since we regained independence, consistency of support, irrespective of what the administration has been in the United States, in Washington. And, during, for example, the Trump administration, there was a large increase in the defense support from Washington, and so and perhaps I can just add something else from about the global picture. I think we can also acknowledge that the United States is able to deal with a number of crises all at once. This has been illustrated by the support for Israel this last week and a half. It has been shown by the way in which, the support for Ukraine is ongoing and pretty solid. And there is cross-party, bipartisan support for Ukraine, irrespective of, the challenges faced within the House of Representatives at the moment. And thirdly, the United States does continue to support Taiwan. I was in Taiwan earlier this year, and I was very impressed to note that Taiwan does have the support of the United States. So effectively, the United States is at this moment in time dealing with three very important issues globally, and we're lucky, and thanks to Iris for pointing out the way in which our profile still appears to be pretty high on the agenda of Washington. It's very encouraging to know that.
Yeah, and Julia, just coming just recently from DC, so. You mentioned also the trust building. It means consistency. It means persistence. So how do you see the trust building will go on?
Well, Iman's made some of the same points that I was going to make, so thank you for that. Just another testament to the great understanding that we have of each other. But I wanted to come back to something that you mentioned, Iman, at the very beginning, which was our shared values. And when we look at the world and we look at the many challenges that are there, yes, indeed, the United States can face multiple challenges at the same time and can continue our commitments to our allies in the face of tragedy and of crisis across the globe. And the reason why we can do that in cooperation with our allies is because of these shared values and because of the trust that we have built. And the importance of the NATO alliance and of our security and defense cooperation is so that we can continue to withstand pressures and threats, whether it is coming from Russia or China or elsewhere in the world. So indeed, as we look across the globe at this moment, we are thankful and appreciative of for our alliance, and that gives us strength to combat these multiple challenges at the same time. In terms of looking forward and continuing to build trust, the United States will continue to invest in our sacred alliance, and especially here on the eastern flank. A great contribution to NATO's capabilities is the presence of the enhanced forward presence here in Latvia. And as part of that, the United States, in coordination with the EFP, with our own troop presence here, we are able to exercise and continue to ensure our preparedness to defend every inch of NATO's land, sea, and air. So we will continue along that way. Indeed, there are politics in the United States. That is always going to be the case. It makes for lots of speculation, but
it makes diplomats' life more interesting.
It does. But the underpinning, as Iman said, is so very important, which is that there is bipartisan support across the board for our alliance, for our support to the Baltic states, and of course for our support for Ukraine. And as President Biden said, we must win the war in Ukraine. Ukraine is about freedom, and it is about freedom everywhere. These shared values that we have for respecting individual dignity, respecting the rights of countries to defend themselves and their sovereignty, these go beyond any one country or any one conflict. These are the universal values that are the underpinning of the international system that the United States, together with its allies, has built up over the last 50 years.
Yes, thank you. Also, I think taking into account those challenges you have already mentioned, Ukraine on agenda, Israel on agenda, Taiwan on agenda. And we both, with Iris, could witness the U.S. Army annual conference last week in Washington, and it was really encouraging to see the commitment to improve the U.S. Army, to hunt for talents, to invest in emerging technologies. So it's really impressive, the structured approach to build the army and involve the society in its work. So how do you see what could be the next challenges? And that would probably go to the question to all of you. So what would be this future defense cooperation? Would we go for military mobility? Would we go for energy security? Would we go for more strategic investment in defense area? So how do we cope with the challenges you see? Iris, please. Yeah.
I would say all of that, and then beyond that, obviously, let's say if I follow just the examples you mentioned, the military mobility is not just the area of investment that you can invest and then you can happily enjoy. That is like Riga will never be ready. The military mobility will never be finished. What is military mobility? When we talk about that, that is two parts of it, or even maybe three. The one thing is forces that you transport through the logistical networks themselves. And then in the modernity, that is all communication systems that link those networks. This obviously is primarily, I think, our own investment together with the European Union, most likely. But of course, any U.S. investment is very much welcome in European Union. We are desperately down, I think, on military mobility, where we were from, let's say, beginning of 90s or even 2000. Peace dividend appears to be very, very costly these days. Because if you can imagine just the port of Bremerhaven, that was one of the busiest for the use of U.S. incoming forces throughout the Cold War, appeared to be unable to even host a couple of brigades at the same time. So that needs to be done not only at this receiving end, but also at the kind of beginning of that process in Europe. If we take a look on a capability landscape, I think we will have a lot of things to analyze from Ukraine, but seemingly artillery is back. Tanks are back. All mobility, concept of mobile maneuver warfare is back. There's a lot of things that we need to kind of undergo here, and obviously the AUSA exhibition was supporting that idea of longer range, faster mobility, but also more secure communications. I specifically highlighted that in my brief, that I cannot imagine any future warfare without security of communications. I had a chance to chair a NATO program called Allied Ground Surveillance for the last 3 years, and you see, people see these 5 flying unmanned aerial vehicles, and then they can enjoy this program, and they think they enjoy the program, but that is just a visible part of it. That's just a frame. That could be a air balloon flying. There will be no difference into that. This is all about sensor that is in there and the high-speed data links. And if we can't do that, if we can't ensure that these data links work, but that infrastructure is filled with people who don't understand how it works, then that balloon can fly wherever it wants. It doesn't make any sense. It costs $2 billion, but what's the point? So I would say all of that is important. Conventional capabilities, industrial capacities to sustain the conflict and war effort is pertinent, but yeah, I would say we will live in the world of connected world of secure communications, and for soldiers that is a matter of life and death.
I would say that also really corresponds with a question what I see online. So how does Latvia envision the role of US in ensuring broader security of Europe? Because we are the part of security belt of Europe, I would say. And would you like to elaborate something on the challenges and things we would like to solve in the future, where to focus on that?
Sure. Well, Latvia understands better than almost any country the multidimensional aspect of security, and that threats to security are not just about what might be coming across your border into your territory, but it can also be in the domain of energy, for example. And so you mentioned energy security earlier, and indeed the way that we see security, it's more than just conventional capabilities and providing capacity building or doing joint exercises. It also includes these other themes of energy security and of building a society that is resilient to malign influence through disinformation, for example. So there are many aspects to this. The US and Latvia work together, given the broad nature of our relationship. We work on many different aspects of what security means. So that is how I see it, but I'm interested to hear from my fellow panelists how they think Latvia envisions the role of the US and Europe's broader security.
Well, I actually would like to just follow on from what you said about for people living in Latvia, it's not just a question of the concern that troops might come across the border, but there are other concerns. Okay, the what we witnessed in Ukraine, obviously, from the 24th of February last year, it did shock society, and it brought back memories of deportations, etc., etc. And that's why the Ukraine issue is still very high on our agenda internally. But if we look at more recent events, then the hybrid threats are very much out there. We have these migrants being sent across by the dictator Lukashenko in Belarus, and using human beings and migrants as a way of, as a type of hybrid warfare to unsettle the society and to test how Latvia can deal with this, to test the vulnerabilities of our border. So, that's one other illustration. And just these last couple of weeks, we've had, of course, the terrorist threats, so-called terrorist threats and the attempts to destabilize society by sending out, hundreds of emails saying that there's a bomb alert, and there are bombs in hundreds of schools in Latvia. And this is not something that just our citizens are feeling, but it's becoming a regional issue with Estonia, Lithuania, also Poland starting to get these types of threats. So I think it's right that we do need to look more at the wider perspective of security and how the hybrid threats really are very important, not to mention cyber security and and it's right that I think we can also offer our US partners the experience of dealing with information security, or as it's called, strategic communications, with our Centre of Excellence, NATO Centre of Excellence, where we have got this niche capability to be able to illustrate, and to delve more deeply into how society can and should react to these threats that are out there almost on a permanent and daily basis.
I would add to what Iman said, one interesting point from our beginning of our cooperation with the United States on defense. In 1993, when this cooperation started, it was initially intended to be civil-military engagement. Very low level, for obvious reasons. There were Russian troops in our country. Americans didn't want to kind of explode shake the situation. So it was intended to be a civil-military engagement. Now we are, 30 years later, we are where we wanted to be from initial period of time in a very active military cooperation. And here's the point, that U.S. code, the codification of U.S. laws, allows this state partnership program, still allows to have cooperation amongst state emergency authorities. That we, due to our swing to military obviously not that much utilized. But here's my advice to American colleagues. You can easily do that on a state partnership program basis, also from Michigan to Latvian authorities that deal with state emergencies. And that all of that, what Imants mentioned on information security, critical infrastructure. Look what happened in the Baltic Sea recently. We are going to pay attention. But we have a legal framework to do so. For that, we don't need additional congressional authorities or additional money. All of that is already in. We simply need to, if we want, both sides return also and include that part where we started.
That was exactly where I wanted to lead our conversation, that basically we have those current threats, those threats on our borders and our society, and also the cyber attacks what we face more and more on our daily life. And so, yeah, how basically to balance this military and non-military cooperation, taking into account that we have also need to strengthen our disaster response and the emergency response, taking into account the climate challenges with what we are facing. So how to balance these things? Do you have some recipe?
I would just say where I just ended. The legal framework is there, so there is no big problem with that. But maybe Imants will recall from our common work in the Ministry of Defense that it takes an active person or persons to move certain ideas. Remember how Joint Tactical Air Controller idea started? With one lieutenant colonel, or maybe a couple of them, I just don't want to kind of say precisely one, but I know one, who moved this idea through the ranks and got the support from Michigan National Guard to go into this very, very sensitive at the time area. You can imagine that offer a capability to a country like Latvia that does not even possess one jet, but to offer the capability that would lead hundreds of American jets into the combat. That was, well, I can attest that was a risky idea, I think. But it ended up, I think, with a huge success. It takes somebody to move these ideas, and somebody courageous enough to come and say, I want to do that. I want this border security be part of the broader cooperation.
Well, let me just continue with that, because it was we're talking about a niche capability. Mm-hmm. So we've got Latvian soldiers who speak good US jargon. And it means that on the ground, they're able to communicate with US pilots. And in fact, we saw in Afghanistan, where Latvian soldiers were really engaged in battles with the Taliban, with the enemy, and they were saving lives by the communication, the skills that they had in communicating with pilots in US airplanes on the battlefield. And so, it's right that these combined forces, finding out where our niche capabilities are, and then offering them to our allies, and I give my full respect to our Latvian soldiers for the skills that they have managed to accumulate over the years, and so there we are. Anyway,
I also mentioned that there has been some more spin-offs out of this JTAC cooperation, because thanks to American JTACs, we basically renewed 100-years-old tradition of building Latvian training airplanes. So that's a part of the Tarragon burst story.
And we were actually able to teach Polish soldiers this capability at the time that we were together in the Ministry of Defense. Our skills were such that we were teaching other allies, but again, that came with support from our US partners, and then we were able to bring it further into the alliance.
And that's what we are doing right now with our Exonicus, working on trauma simulators for army, medical personnel. So we are going further with this cooperation, and probably there are some ideas, and I think that my members wouldn't forgive if in the last minutes given to me, I wouldn't ask how could we bring our defense industries cooperation closer. Would it be strategic investment? Would it be some program for SMEs? So, because during the last years we have had very good cooperation with US DEFCOM, we have cooperated with FCT, and there are a lot of good ideas coming, but what's probably from your perspective, what could we do more to cooperate?
Mm-hmm.
If I may, there is one thing that I want to say, and I want to encourage American side in particular to consider this. We have been very actively at our daily jobs, obviously, at the embassy in Washington. We are engaging with defense industries, various sizes. One theme that constantly kind of threads through the conversation is this argument that Latvia, you lack a strategic depth. And that is a problem because I can understand industries having a cautious approach to this region, thinking that should they invest millions and millions of their own shareholders' money, that is happening just on the noses of Russians and so on. But Finland is by no means having a larger strategic depth, so there is no such argument with Finland. Now Finland and Sweden, hopefully soon coming into NATO, Sweden in particular, then this argument, assuming that we all do the right thing around the Baltic Sea, and I also alluded that slightly in my report, then the Baltic Sea becomes a NATO lake. And if we, as I said, assume doing the right things and eliminating Russian perceived advantages, then certainly strategic depth increases even more. But I think this is a very important message that all of us must deliver to US and other industries for the same sake. The Baltic states are the stable and very secure economic region. This is a region with a huge future and a great future. Therefore, investment, particularly now, is a critical moment. So if you don't invest now, then you kind of go into this argument that the instability is foreseeable. If you invest now, you go contrary to any Russian narrative saying that these are, how did they say, the orphaned countries, and the investment is not worth of your penny. So I would say this is a very important thing that we all need to continue deliver to U.S. industries, because the interest is there. The interest is there. They understand that we are serious about our security commitments, that we are serious about our defense budgets, and we are serious people, so to say. But this is something that somehow sits inside, and we need to kind of root it out.
Julia, would you like to say some word on defense investment from private sector or defense cooperation between industries? So.
Absolutely. This is an area where the U.S. Embassy is very engaged in trying to bring parties together, to encourage exchange on both sides, investment from the United States and Latvia and vice versa, to gain exposure for Latvian firms in the United States. And there are opportunities like the AUSA conference that you mentioned, where it's possible to bring stakeholders together. And you, both Imants and Iris mentioned the comparative advantage that Latvia has in terms of being able to identify important niches. And I think that is so true and such a testament to the long-standing relationship and understanding that we have between the United States and Latvia. And so we, as the U.S. government, will continue to look for opportunities to highlight where Latvia can fit in, where Latvian companies and Latvian industry can fit into these niches, because indeed there are many places where Latvian technology and insight can provide a real advantage to our shared defense goals.
just recently we have had our cyber chess conference where our companies managed to invite also cyber specialists from the last year's AUSA to Latvia to basically deliver their understanding about cyber threat environment in general. But I would say that probably, yes, this is a window of opportunity for private investment to look on Latvia, look on other Baltic countries and to be present here. So, but in general, probably still I would go with my last question to Mr. Imants regarding the new initiatives which we see in a European Union, and these are initiatives which, from my perspective, they had to be here much more earlier. So basically, we have these developments about economic security. Basically, we start to talk about economical security just now. So how do you see this thing evolving and?
Well, I think you're quite right that the European Union has always been sort of slightly behind the game, as it were. Yeah. But let's not forget that after the 24th of February last year, the European Union did start engaging in giving military assistance to Ukraine, which is a big leap forward, as it were. And what I want to sort of mention, not so much about the economic security, which I think has also been dealt with in many ways by the turnaround of energy supply and the move away, especially from the main European strategic power, Germany, moving away from its errant dependency on Russian energy, that has been dealt with over the last year and a half, just as we have dealt with it, and our over-reliance that we had on Russian gas, and that's, we've turned that around. So that has been a very great success story. But at the same time, if we look at the industry cooperation issue. I'm not an expert on defence industry. I hope to improve my knowledge in my current position. But if we focus on what is crucial at the moment, and that is actually supplying Ukraine with assets that they need, such as the 155 millimeter ammunition, where Europe really needs to come up with the goods, especially in support of our US allies, where everybody is facing these challenges, not only in the ammunition but in other areas of support to Ukraine to defend these values that we were talking about earlier, of freedom and democracy, where people are dying every day, in a neighbouring country, in a nearby country to Latvia, where we keep witnessing these atrocities that are being committed by Russia. And so I think that's the crucial not only possibility for the defence industry, but necessity from the perspective of a defence and security viewpoint.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I think that we also have covered quite many of the questions which we have seen from our Slido from online. But understanding the challenges about decision making and political leadership way of thinking. Yes, there is one also interesting question from online that how we could ensure that defense cooperation between our countries remains transparent and accountable. So I think it's quite crucial for our societies to support it, and especially for American society to support it and see that there is like win-win situation. So are there some measures, something else is doable? So how do you see this question to be answered? Yeah, Julia?
I have been impressed in my short time here in Latvia. I've been here only 6 weeks, but that this is a place that really does value transparency in decision making at the government level. And thankfully, both the US and Latvia are robust democracies where people expect that, and that is only going to make us stronger as societies and as nations. So I welcome the question. I think that it is important that citizens of both of our countries have visibility into how their budget decisions are made and where priorities are identified, so that they see how their representatives are reflecting the values of their society. And certainly that is the case in the United States. And as I mentioned earlier, it is not always a neat process. There are politics there, like everywhere. And we see that playing out right now. But ultimately, that very question of transparency and accountability to the people is what makes our democracy a strong one.
Exactly. Thank you. Yes, Iris or Imant, who's...
Yeah, I think it's a very simple thing. I mean, we know what resources we devote for this cooperation, and at the end of the day, there is this idea that I think there was Lord Robertson in 2002 said what's important for NATO, it's capabilities, capabilities, and capabilities. So there is no more important things that should stem out of security cooperation between security assistance, first and foremost, so that U.S. taxpayers precisely know where that money went. And I think we have, where it's classified, where it's open, and we can show whatever we have done. And the best attestation of our commitment is, let's say, these HIMARS or Black Hawks or whatever we purchase from the United States, so we can show how we use them.
The right quantity and right quality. Yeah. So, Imant, would you?
Well, I'll just focus on the transparency and accountability issue, because I think we can be very thankful to civic society in Latvia and the press for keeping, people like me, politicians and others that are in positions of leadership on guard and questioning, how decisions are made. And I think this is, we can be grateful that, our society is very dynamic and doesn't hesitate to question the decisions of politicians and leaders.
Yeah. Would we have some more questions from the audience right now? Yes, I have a promise of 5 more extra minutes, so please, yes, go.
Agent provocateur.
Thank you. Once again, my name is Gins Egermanis and I'm with the Latvian Institute of International Affairs. Given this brief moment for last minutes of discussion, I would say I have 2 messages. Probably I will be able to provoke a short discussion. One is Finland and Sweden were mentioned. And I think that with the Swedish accession, this region will look somewhat different. And I assume, probably I'm wrong, but we need a new American commitment in order to reshape the debate within the region. We can do it on our own, I guess, but the American presence would be extremely valuable. And the second point is, I wrote about it a few months ago, just before Vilnius NATO summit, and I was talking about this. We need to boost our deterrence, because the Russians have now used to fight their wars in foreign countries. And in addition to forward defense, we need forward deterrence. Your president, the American president, just recently said, don't. And we need this don't in this region as well.
Yes.
That's my point.
Yeah. Sweden, Finland?
On my side, very quickly, yeah, I mentioned Sweden and Finland, and I think that, security situation swings very sharply in favor of NATO in the Baltics, and NATO shouldn't waste a single second to establish that this don't, as you said, is now a new baseline, and how does that end with considerations on Russian containment and these kinds of ideas? I don't know yet. It's a matter of discussion, but certainly if we don't do that, then we will be later sorry. Then obviously a lot of things that we discussed today, and a lot of things that I wrote in a brief, and a lot of things that happen in these relations between Latvia and US is because of Russia. Should Russia be a normal country, I think we will probably not have this discussion today, and would not have a lot of things. But we need to read Russians right. They believe that they can win the war against the West. They can outlast the West. They believe that they have so many actually general advantages. They don't even see that they are losing in Ukraine. You know, they perceive that they are actually winning it very decisively. So these perceptions that they have are totally different. And again, you rightly said, Gintz, don'ts are becoming a must, so to say. So concerning the troop presence, the more the merrier.
Yeah, well, my good friend and colleague Gintz said that we need new US commitments. Well, I'm not sure we do, because my sense is that the commitments are ongoing. You know, they haven't gone away anywhere. The situation has changed very much to our favor, you know, with Finland already being an important member of NATO and coming with important assets and contributions. Sweden will be there shortly, hopefully. And so, you know, I think that, to my mind, I don't see any need for new US commitments. I think that they will continue to be ongoing.
Julia, would you go with
And
this?
I would respond where I started, which is we just celebrated 100 years of diplomatic relations. We are embarking on the next 100 years. The U.S. commitment to Latvia is steadfast. Our troop presence has been persistent. We have seen an increase in capabilities due to the increase in the number of NATO troops that are here on the ground. The Canadian-led enhanced forward presence due to grow to a brigade level by 2026. And I would say that allies remain committed. At the Vilnius summit last year, we discussed concrete ways in which we are going to expand our capabilities and our preparedness on the eastern flank. So as we look forward to the Washington summit next year, I know we're going to be discussing these ideas in more detail, and I look forward to continuing to work on deepening the security and defense relationship during my time here. And as Iman said, it is persistent, it is consistent, it is built on trust, and will remain so.
Thank you. Thank you for the great and very careful audience. It has been a great privilege for me to be together with professionals and hear your expertise. And thanks to Riga Conference for bringing all of us together.
Thanks.